Today we are going to go through the third task of the reading module, which is gapped text. Okay, what is a gapped text? We'll need to read a long text which has 6 gaps, and we'll need to find which sentence goes in each gap. Okay, the text is an article from a newspaper or a magazine. This is how reading part 3 looks like. As you can see here, you will have 11 minutes to complete this task. You will need to read this long text and choose one of these sentences to go in each gap so the paragraph makes sense. Let's read the question. So we have 6 sentences are missing from this test. Drag and drop the correct sentence into each gap. That means that you will need to click each sentence and drag it to the correct gap, okay, and drop it there. And there is one extra sentence which you don't need to use, okay, so there are only 6 gaps in the whole test and you have 7 different sentences. Let's do a couple of examples to see what is the important information that we need to be paying attention to. So let's read this first paragraph, okay, that we need to complete. One cluster balloon enthusiast is James Eade. In one of his recent adventures, James flew his clustered balloons across the largest area of mountains in Europe, the Alps. This was not his first flight, though. Now, his greatest love is to go on cluster ballooning adventures. Okay, so what is the key information here? The key information is normally before and after the gap. Okay, so here I would say that this was not his first flight, though. Okay. Now let's go sentence by sentence. The first one, at the temperature drop, the situation became more serious. Well, here we are not talking about any specific situation, so this one doesn't make any sense. What about the second one? There was an unexpected problem. Again, we are talking about a situation, and here we are talking about the general idea of liking clusters balloons, right? So it doesn't make sense either. It started to blow him towards the local airport. It, I guess, that is talking about the wind, right? So here it doesn't make any sense either because there's nothing going on specifically. What about the fourth one? Old-fashioned hot air balloons. Well, here is not talking about old-fashioned hot air balloons, right? It's talking about flying cluster balloons, so doesn't make any sense either. Next one we have, in fact, it was the most incredible thing he had ever done. Well, there's no saying in fact he did something super incredible, like it was the most incredible thing, because it's not talking about a specific flight, so it doesn't make any sense either. Last one we have, however, it took almost 20 years for the dream to finally come true. There's no however to contrast here. There's no idea to contrast to be using however. So it doesn't make any sense that it took almost 20 years. What did it took 20 years, okay? That it doesn't make any sense to anything in this sentence, in this paragraph, sorry. So the correct one would be, he had always been interested in flying and gained his pilot license many years ago. So this was not his first flight, though. He had always been interested in flying and gained his pilot license many years ago. So that's why this was not his first flight, because he had been flying since a lot of years ago, and now his greatest love is to go on cluster balloon adventure. Okay, so this one is the one that makes sense, as you can see. Let's do next paragraph together. It says, according to James, there is no better way to fly. Cluster ballooning is spectacular and is quite different from the first balloon flights. The cap, as a result, it's possible to hear things that are many kilometers away. Okay, so what is the key information here? The key information is this, that is talking about the first balloon flight, and it's going to tell us something that as a result makes it possible to hear things that are many kilometers away. Okay, so we need a cause here. So the first sentence is talking about a specific situation that doesn't make any sense here because it's talking about the general idea of flying, not a specific situation. Next sentence, the same problem. The third one, again, the same. It started to blow him. There's not a specific story going on, so it doesn't make sense. Let's jump to this one here. In fact, it was the most incredible thing he had ever done. Well, as you can see here, the test is in quotation marks. That means that is what James is actually saying. So we cannot use a sentence that says he had ever done, because he's talking in first person, okay? That's the meaning of the quotation marks. Okay, so next one, he had always been interested. The same is in quotation marks, so doesn't make sense. And however, it took almost 20 years. That however means that it's going to be in contrast with the previous sentence, and here it doesn't make any sense. So the correct one is this one. Here it says, old-fashioned hot air balloons made a terrible noise, but cluster balloons tend to be totally silent. So it's talking about the first balloon flight that made a terrible noise, and it's talking about the cluster balloons that are silent, so as a result, it's possible to hear things that are many kilometers away. Just remember for this reading part 3 that you will need to use 6 sentences, and there is always an extra sentence that you don't need to use, that you need to be very carefully about the key information. That means the information before and after the gap, okay, because it needs to make sense, the sentence, with what goes before and what goes after that, and that you will have 11 minutes to complete this task.